Hello, friend. Today, I want to look with you at something that quietly overturns much of what we think we know about manifestation, healing, and even the role of the mind itself. There is a common idea, very popular today, that the mind creates reality. But the higher way reveals something more precise and far more freeing. The mind does not create reality, the mind forms experience. Reality itself is already spiritually complete, whole, harmonious, and intact. Creation is finished. What changes is not creation, but our perception of it. And that perception is filtered. From the moment we enter this world, the mind begins interpreting life through layers of conditioning. Before we ever chose a belief, the mind was already being shaped by prenatal influence, by early environment, and by education and by personal experience. These filters don't create truth, they distort it. And so the same perfect spiritual reality can appear as harmony in one moment and discord in another, depending entirely on the lens through which it is perceived. When the mind judges life through the categories of good and evil, success and failure, health and sickness, it produces a divided experience. But when that mind rests, when it stops judging, harmony reveals itself without effort. This is why spiritual healing is not about fixing conditions. The role of the practitioner is not to diagnose, analyze, label, or improve anyone. It is not to decide whether something is good or bad, serious or minor, sick or well. True healing begins the moment we refuse to judge appearances. We sit still, we get quiet, and we wait. Not for a solution, but for revelation. We wait for Spirit to reveal what is already true rather than trying to make something become true. The moment we judge a condition, we energize the very illusion we are trying to overcome. But when judgment dissolves, the illusion loses its substance. This is why Jesus didn't merely address outward behavior. Again and again, he said, "You've heard it said, but I say unto you." He wasn't raising the moral bar, he was pointing beyond morality altogether. He was revealing that true freedom isn't just freedom from outward acts, but freedom from the inner thought patterns that produce them. Anger, lust, fear, resentment, these are not sins to be managed. They are symptoms of a divided consciousness. And division cannot be healed through control. It can only be healed through awakening. That is why the teaching, resist not evil, is so radical and so misunderstood. This is not passive acceptance of wrongdoing, it is the refusal to give evil a mental reality. To resist evil mentally is to affirm its power. To plot, plan, scheme, and anxiously prepare for every possible outcome is to confess belief in a universe that must be managed by fear. Grace does not need your strategy. Harmony does not need your anxiety. When we let go of mental resistance, when we stop rehearsing outcomes and calculating futures, we make room for a higher order to establish itself naturally. And yes, life will sometimes present trials. But trials are not punishments, they're wake up calls. Comfort alone rarely leads to transformation. If life were always easy, we would settle for pleasant illusions rather than pursue spiritual reality. Tribulation interrupts complacency. It pushes us beyond surface living and forces us to ask deeper questions. Not, how do I fix this, but who am I being? This brings us to the distinction between mortal mind and the mind of Christ. Mortal mind is not a person or an enemy. It is a mode of perception that sees through opposites: good versus evil, gain versus loss, health versus sickness. The Christ mind sees none of these as ultimate. The Christ mind rests in the awareness that there is only one presence, one power, one life expressing itself as all. Freedom does not come from mastering the mind. Freedom comes from releasing the mind into its proper place as an instrument, not a creator. This is why many physical healings do not last. When a condition disappears but consciousness remains unchanged, the underlying pattern simply finds a new form of expression. True healing is not the correction of a symptom, it is the spiritualization of consciousness. When consciousness is transformed, life reorganizes itself without effort. Forms change naturally when belief in their reality dissolves. So, the invitation of the higher way is not to improve the human experience, but to see through it. Not to perfect the personal self, but to rest in the self beyond it. And when judgment ceases, when effort relaxes, when the mind yields to stillness, what has always been true quietly comes into view. Not something new, not something created, but harmony finally revealed. Um, oh, I guess that was the end.